DDNS rules how to begin a concept. It wouldn't be on Zoom, it wouldn't be on that.
Okay, so make sure that we boot our virtual machine to the server that we were working on for most of the semester. And then as you boot your VM, make sure that you check your settings and go to network and make sure that we're on host adapter because we don't want to broadcast IP addresses. All right. So I put that here. Once we log on to our virtual machine on a hard drive, hi. Should you pick up a drive? Okay. We are going to work with RRAS today. We're also going to work with NAT, DNS records, and DHCP. So on your VM, once you change your NAT configuration, you can click input, Control-Alt-Delete, and then we're going to log in. Okay. Then once we're logged in, we are going to add a role and we are going to go through the wizard. It's going to be role based and you're going to select remote access. We talked a little bit about this week. Now remote access requires routing and we don't have routing configuration on the server. So when you get through some of the steps, you are going to get some kind of information or error generated because you are going to require to put in routing information for RRAS. So I want to walk you through the initial steps. So back to your dashboard, you are going to click add roles and features. We're going to go next. And then we're going to keep role based. So go next. And then we make sure that this is the server that I'm using. It's the only one. Go next. And then I'm going to select remote access. Okay. And then we're going to proceed. So for the role that we're going to select is going to be remote access. So I'm here in step 7. And then when you go through the feature, you are going to select routing and add the feature. You cannot have remote access without the routing capability. Hi. So once we boot the virtual machine and we add remote access, we come back here. We're going to scroll down. It's going to select like the administration tools, right? Let me see.
I think and ask for routing when you click next.
Yeah. So this is part of the tool. So when you go through and proceed, right? It's under here. And then you're going to select routing. Now, the other option that you see on this is that you can have it through a web application proxy. Remember, we talked about how sometimes you can remote into your system by authenticating to through a web application, or you can do a direct access and VPN, which is your RRAS. This is what you also see as a common option if you select this, right? So once we select the routing, it's going to add in some of the web interface information, and you've done IIS already in the past. So if you already installed it, it doesn't need to add it to the list. And then you are going to add the feature. So it's going to automatically enable the direct access in the VPN with it. Okay. And it's a way that the user can interface with the remote access service through these two features. So once we have done that, we selected the routing, it's going to select the direct access. And then we are going to go through and finish the installation. Okay, and that will take a few minutes. And then once this bar is complete, it's going to show us that it's done. And then you're gonna go to close. So installing, like what we talked about before, doesn't mean that it's ready. We have to make sure that we configure it. So a way that you can manage your remote access is through the tools, and Microsoft uses routing and remote access management console. Okay. So I'm halfway done now with the installation. Any questions? Yeah.
CIS357.
No, you're gonna use a 40, check in the CIS40A VM. You don't have, do you have a server 2019 on there? You can probably use that one. You can probably use that one. Just make sure that you have DNS and DHCP on it, okay? Yeah, I think we did that as part of 25 at one point. But if you don't have that, you have to install it before you do this lab. Okay. So once it's complete, right? Then I'm gonna go ahead and click close. Let me close my DNS manager there. So I'm here at number 11. Once I finish my installation for my RRAS, then I'm gonna go click on tools at the top, and I should be able to access the routing and remote access manager. So I'm gonna go here, and whenever you install it needs configuration, you always see the exclamation point. You can always click on that and it will take you to the option. So another way, and we will take care of the VPN ones later on, but you can see here, click on tools, and then you are gonna go to your remote access. So look at, it's gonna put remote access management, which is a separate thing that's for the direct access, remote access. And then, but you need to configure your routing. So we need to click on routing and remote access. So this is the manager, right? And whenever that you see this little red symbol, that's red arrow, it just means that it's not configured, right? So what I need to do is I need to configure and enable routing and remote access for my remote access to work. So you can right click and then make sure that you select your server name, and then you can configure. So what I did was I went into the manager and then I select my server and I right click and I configure the remote access. Okay. So go next. Now here, what you would see is it's going to prompt you a lot of the options that are related to your connection, which is your VPN. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select NAT. Now, if you prefer to use, remember we talked about dial-up, right? That's a default option for the wizard. You can also set up VPN access and NAT to combine, and this is going to use the server through the internet and they're going to connect to you from the internet with the public IP. And I don't have a public IP, so I cannot use that option. And then if you have your remote network, right, server set up, then you can select this. So what we're going to do is we're going to select NAT and click OK. And NAT stands for network address translation. So if you look at this, it says allow internal client to connect to the internet using the public IP address. And so here, once I select NAT, I'm going to choose the second option and then I'm going to proceed. So it's gonna, I can only choose the second option, right? So here we're going to get an error. Okay, it says the wizard cannot continue because the network connection is not detected. So I might have to, let me change this back on. So let me switch it back to NAT and see. But it should not matter though, because you're on the static IP and you're not connected out to the internet anyway. Okay. So I don't think it matters if you change this.
I got the error where it says I need to set up a firewall exclusion,
Yeah,
and then it took me to a demand dial interface wizard.
Cancel out of it.
yeah,
You're done with that.
yeah,
If you wanted to see the error and understand what it said, that's
Ye-
what it's gonna ask you on the paper, is to write down what it said.
yeah.
And then after that, just get out of that part, because you don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah, because so the next step after that is you have to set up the firewall rules to allow the client to connect to your server, right? So yeah, that's what it's telling you, is that if you have your firewall blocking it, your client will not be able to connect to that port.
And they keep trying to go through the wizard, but you can't.
Yeah,
sit down
so
and
yeah, so
stuff.
you won't be able to finish this because we don't have a routing mechanism with that server yet.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah. okay,
I should have taken a snapshot of mine before I started. Let me get use that.
and you have your drive?
Mhm.
I see this one that has your name on it also. You check this one?
Yeah, he does have the blue. But yeah. Maybe you're accidentally doing the wrong one.
Okay. Any questions? So at one point after you install your RRAS, when you're getting an error, right, you can end the wizard. You can cancel the wizard after you put down the information for that answer. Okay, it tells you to close that. All right, let's talk about DNS sec. And this is important for the DNS. So in the prior lab, you had already set up your DNS, which is your domain name service system. And what you already probably have your forward lookup zone from a prior lab. And if you haven't, you can just create a new zone really quick. Okay, so here I can go to my tools and my DNS manager. Okay, and it should show me my server. So I need to, whenever you see the arrow, you need to click it to drop it down and see, and inside the forward lookup zone, you would see, right? In a prior lab, you might have done like an HQ or branch 1 or whatever zone that you created. So we talked about the DNS records in the back, in the past, in the prior weeks, where how it would use those records to be able to resolve, right, the name to for the name server, or we can use IP address like the A records and so on. Okay. So here, what we're gonna do is we are gonna click on the forward lookup zone. This is done in the past. So if I click the HQ here, that's the zone that I created. And then I'm gonna right click the zone that has your name, like .com, right? So here is mine. I'm gonna go ahead and right click and I'm gonna choose DNS sec. And this is how you can secure your DNS record. Okay. So after that, I'm going to proceed with the wizard. So we are going to choose sign the zone. So what we're going to do is we are going to choose DNS sec and sign the zone. And it's going to give you the security extension for your DNS. Then I'm going to go ahead and click next to proceed to the wizard. And then we're going to use all the default settings, but make sure that you read what it's giving you. So go here. Now, if you choose, we're going to select this option, use the default setting to sign the zone, unless you want to customize or you want to find the zone from another area or another server. And you're going to go next. So it tells me here that the algorithm it's going to use is going to be RSA SHA-256. This is the signing key for the DNS records. And it tells me that my signature is valid for 168 hours. Okay. This is able to replicate. That means I can pass it from the hierarchy top of the domain to the next level. And then the rollover frequency and so on. So this is the configuration that I would probably need in order to be able to transfer it from one to the next server. So I can go ahead and click next, and it's really quick. It's gonna finish. So now what happens is this is the top of my forest, right? I do have my hosts and all my other records, but I enable the security extension for my DNS. And that's the practice that you need to know, is that we want to secure our zone that we created, and you simply just use the sign zone. So once you sign it, you can unsign it, right? But you want to have a DNS sec, and then you can always check this property. Okay, so here it tells me that this is the key master. Okay, and with that, I'm going to show you that it generates this. Okay, so if we look at its property, it's going to show me that there is a way that we can change up the configuration. So this allows the system to protect your DNS. Okay, and it's important that we understand that, and it's simply just enable that extension for your DNS. Okay, so we signed a zone. Now what we're going to do is we are going to make a reverse lookup zone, and this is not always required. So if somebody looking you up with an IP address is able to find the domain information that that system belongs to, right? So here's your reverse lookup. It should be empty. To start, what we're going to do is we are going to right click it, and we're going to make a new zone. Okay. So here we're going to go right click new zone. We're going to go next. This is going to be the primary zone, which is a copy zone that was updated from a direct server. Unless if you are creating a copy of another zone from another server, then it is a secondary. So it is a copy of itself, so it should be a primary zone. Then after that, what you are going to do is we are going to select to all the servers running the domain controller in the forest, and we only have one right now. You yourself is on top of the forest. So we are going to go ahead and click to all, and it selected this for me, right? Then go to next. And we are using IPv4, so we are going to use the reverse lookup zone for IPv4. And for the reverse lookup, you just need to put your network ID. So that will be the first part of your IP address. If you don't know your IP address, go back to your dashboard, go to your local server, or look in the box, right? And your IP address is shown there. Okay. It should be under your local server. So mine is a little bit different than yours. So I have 174.68.0.100. So I just key in the network part. And then after I put in my network ID for my IP, I will go ahead and click next. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to use the default option, which is the first option, and we're going to click finish. So if you read this, it tells me that it is going to allow only secure dynamic updates, which is with Active Directory, and this is the option that you should use, right? Unless you want you know, other options like this creates security vulnerability. So we want to use the first option. And then we're going to click finish. Hello. So once that's created, you're going to see your resolution from an address. So it creates these records. So after that, you would be able to see how many records that you would identify for your reverse lookup. So in here, if I look at my reverse lookup zone, I should have 2. Right? Here's the NS and the SOA. And then we want to find the information about the records, right? What is the NS stands for your name service? We talked about that in your notes from a few weeks back, but you can also find information online. So look up the information for the SOA and the NS. Those are the records that you see. So compare this to my forward lookup zone, right? I also have the host, right? The host A and the NS and the SOA. So whenever that you have the reverse lookup zone, it's going to have these 2 records compared to a full forward lookup zone. It has more records, right? A is going to be able to resolve that to IP, so domain name to IP. So put down the records information and then take a screen capture. Now, yeah.
Can you go back to the demo ID?
The first part of your IP address. Yeah, so whatever the IP address that you're using, just the network identifier. So without the last octet, just the first 3 octet.
Yeah.
All right. So now once you have your, let me come back to the, and so if you double click one of the record, right, you would see its property. And what it's going to do is we are going to look at the default minimum time to live, right? And time to live is going to tell you that window of time. Let me see. Yeah, so click the SOA, double click it, and you're going to see for the start of authority, the TTL is located here. So the minimum time to live is going to be 1 hour. You can always change it, right? And it's going to expire after 1 day. The retry interval is every 10 minutes. So we can modify this option. So the time to live record is going to be 1 hour for me, for my SOA. Okay. And then for the SOA, we're going to come back to the general tab. And under this, what we're going to see is that we're going to look at the information about the integrated Active Directory. So here it tells me that it is Active Directory integrated for SOA. And that was one of the options that it selected for me when I install it with the wizard. So it should be there, right? So that means that if you don't have AD services, you will not be able to store the record information for this record. Okay, so ideally DNS always goes together with Active Directory service. And then after that, we're going to look at the records dynamic updates. So it is only secure updates. And we just set this up right before that when you select only secure updates, right? So that means that it's only going to be able to update information if there is security implementation or settings. All right, and then click on aging button and you're going to select scavenge for the stale records. So stale records are not used, right? So when you click on aging right here, And what happens is after 7 days, if it's not used, what we can do is we can renew it or reuse it. So when you select this option, what it's going to do is it's going to be able to we can change the configuration. You can modify this, right? Because remember, it says that after 1 day, that was the time to live, is it's going to live for 1 day. And that means it's going to stay in the system for a week. So after a week, it becomes stale, right? So what we can do is we can reuse this the records in that if we scavenge it. So if you select this option, you can change the number of days that it can be reused. Okay. So what we will see is that we would be able to modify this and click OK, and then OK, and then close our DNS manager. Okay. So this gives you a little bit more details on how we would configure our DNS records and then do the reverse lookup zone. Any questions? All right. For the next part, we are going to work with dynamic updates and DNS and in the DHCP. So when we talked about dynamic updates, it impacts the DNS, but it's also going to impact our DHCP server. Okay. So now after you configure your DNS, you're going to go into your DHCP. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, go to tools. Anytime that you need to use any of the manager, it's in there. So here's my DHCP. In the prior lab, we already created our scope, remember, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to, in the console, we are going to right click the IPv4. We're going to select property, and we're going to select automatic update statistic every 60 minutes. So every hour, it's going to update the information for our scope. So right click, okay. And then we are going to select property. And then you're going to select this and change this to 60 minutes. Because by default, it usually updates every 10 minutes. And you want to go, sorry, I should put 1 hour. It didn't like the, so here that should be 0, 0. So you can put 1 hour and 0 minutes. And you want it to log. Okay. So after we change it to 1 hour, we're going to click apply. And then we're going to go to the DNS tab to view the settings. So DHCP, we're going to click apply, and then you're going to come here to the DNS tab. So in the DNS tab, we want to look for the DNS records that dynamically update. We already saw some of it earlier. So when is, it says when are DNS records dynamically update? Okay. So if you enable the dynamic updates according to the settings, your records is going to be requested by the client. So when we set this for the 1 hour to be update, it should be 1 hour. Let me come back. Yeah. Oh, it tells you right here. Only if requested by the DHCP clients, right? So it checks every hour, but it dynamically updates only when the client is requesting the DHCP service. Okay, so it tells you in the option that is selected there. And then what happens to the PTR record when the lease is ended? Okay, so the PTR record, as this option is selected, it's gonna discard the lease after it's deleted. So it's gonna give that lease back. That means it's gonna throw that away and it's gonna put it back into the scope for lease to other system. So what happens is when the PTR record is go away, right? If it's gone away, then the lease get put back to be reused for other system. And it tells you the answer right there, okay, for 42. So once you've seen this, what you're gonna do is you're gonna click on the advanced tab. And then it tells you where the log of it is. So in the future, if you need to look at the log for the security, we would go to this path, right? It's under your C, Windows System 32, under DHCP. So put down the path for your log, which is right here. And if I copy this path, I can open it by going into my directory like this and then paste it. Right, there it is, right? I should be able to find it like here. And this is useful when you're doing forensic or you're doing incident response as well for security. Is you need to go in and look at the DHCP leases and the changes and so on. Okay, so once we have that, we would close the manager for the DHCP. Sorry, I should click OK and then close the manager. And that's pretty much wraps up the lab. It should not take you very long. I know if you don't have DNS and DHCP, that you need to have those. So just make sure that you install, and then that means that you have to go back to the other lab and complete the steps from the other lab. Any questions? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop my recording.